Hello and welcome back to another episode of Property-Pxrn Stars, the premium property podcast brought to you by your hosts David Lindley.
And I'm Matt Giggs.
And our star today is someone very special. There is a town in Cambridgeshire called St Neots, where for the last decade, two agents have been fighting in the streets, taking lumps out of each other, vying for that first position there, and have bitterly hated each other all the way up until the 1st of January.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we love each other.
We do, actually.
Yeah.
He bailed me out once upon a time in Waitrose. So I was at the till and I had nothing on me, and I'd bought a bottle of wine.
He was totally naked.
And I looked up and I was like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. And there was my hero.
Our guest, our star, Simon Bradbury.
He went... No, he didn't. Actually, he paid for my wine. So that's I'm like, yeah. So we don't hate each other.
What he's not told you about, though, is his extortionate interest rates on that loan he gave you 8 years ago.
That's true.
Now
I'm still
you
paying
own
it
your
off.
house.
I'm still paying it off.
That's true.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome
to
you too, man.
But it's good to have you on the podcast.
This feels so strange. Yeah, we have been in
does.
competition for years and years and years, and now we're not. So,
Yeah.
but it's good.
It is good.
It's good to talk, as
Absolutely.
I say.
And you and I have worked together for a long time.
Yeah.
A long time. We've spoken to each other for probably months. If you added up all the call time,
Yes.
it's probably been months on
Absolutely
all sorts
right.
of stuff on the premium market, on
Yeah.
charitable stuff, on Carol Cons, I
Stuff.
think, polo stuff. There's been so much we've done.
There is.
And now we can tick off podcasts on the list as well.
Absolutely spiffing.
And in typical Simon Bradbury fashion, we don't want to do a normal podcast today, do we?
We don't.
No.
We don't.
The world does revolve around Simon Bradbury.
Of course.
And what are we going to do today then? Talk to us about that.
I thought it'd be quite good fun because now I've changed my role. Now I'm not with Thomas Morris anymore. I've become very reflective, David. And so I thought it would be good fun to go back and share the 10 lessons that I have learned as an estate agent in the last 40 years.
40, you don't look old enough to have had 40
Get
years
out
under
here,
your belt.
baby.
Hell of a moisturising regime.
Yes, it is.
Right, well, let's
I'm
do it
interested
then.
to hear these. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Come on then, let's go.
Okay. So the first one, now some of these might be a smidge controversial.
All the better for
No,
it.
we're okay.
Well,
with that.
let's just see. Okay, so the first lesson that I have learned is experience is massively overrated. Hugely overrated.
When you say experience, you mean the experience of the agent or the customer experience?
The experience of the agent.
Okay.
The amount of time, I'm guilty of this too, the amount of times when you're doing like a biography, perhaps for a listing presentation, or you're trying to tell somebody about yourself, well, I've had 10 years experience, I've had 20 years experience, I've had 30 years experience, I've had 40 years.
Yeah.
It really
Boring.
doesn't matter. Yeah. Matt, I know you because I know you're a very credible and effective salesman. You'll know the difference between a feature and a benefit.
Yeah.
All too often, in my experience, estate agents and salespeople generally talk too much about features and not enough about benefits. And all that experience is a feature. It is not a benefit. In fact, I would argue that experience can be really prohibitive, because people get stuck in tram lines in business, in any business, but definitely in a estate agency, and they think, well, I've had this experience, I know what the answer is to that, when they don't. I'll give you a couple of examples. In fact, this does resonate with my own experience, but I heard Jason Tebb of On the Market talk about it at a recent EA Masters event. He said, and Matt, you may or may not be able to relate to this, but I certainly can relate to it. You'll sometimes get a brand new negotiator, no experience, never done estate agency before. They've got an absolute awesome attitude. They want to go out and kill the world. They join you, and I know you guys are very much into coaching and training, as we were and still are at Thomas Morris. You give them a couple of weeks training, you teach them as many closures as you can do, you get them all fired up and ready to go, and then they go into the branch and they think, right, now what am I supposed to, oh yes, I've got to ring out some applicants. Can I have a list of our applicants, preferably hot ones, please, Mr. Manager? Manager gives them a nice list of hot buyers, and then they think, right, could I have a list of the properties? Yeah, I've got the list of the properties. Yeah, okay, what am I going to do? Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to ring up these buyers. I need to play into their needs, and I need to get some viewings, because I know from what I've been trained, the more viewings I get, the more offers I'm going to get, the more sales I'm going to get. And then they find a property that fits this, matches with this applicant. They ring, "Hi, Mr. Applicant," and they'll perhaps try out a little close that they've learnt doing, and they get the viewer. They get the viewing, and then they get an offer, and they close the deal. But that's the one, that house, is the one that everybody else knows in the branch as Mad Mrs. Muggins' house. That one will never sell. It's overpriced. It's in the wrong part of town. But because the person didn't know that.
So ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss, nice one. On that particular situation, you can see why experience, well, I know everybody hates that property. I know nobody wants to live in that part of town. But the person without the experience hasn't got those mind blocks. I often find when people first join Thomas Morris, we, like I'm sure yourself, have league tables for various things that people need. So often, people in the first few weeks with zero experience appear at the top of these leagues. Really, really, really important.
It's going to be a very boring podcast if we just nod along and agree with you. So let me challenge you on something. Would
Go
you
for
say, and especially because this is the premium property podcast,
Oh,
would
yes.
you say that's... Thanks for that. that statement about experience still extends to the premium market
Absolutely
as well?
it does, yeah. I do understand, so mark my words, massively exaggerated. That doesn't mean that experience is completely useless, but it's massively exaggerated as a really, really good point. I mean, we've had, when I was at Thomas Morris, I had the most fantastic senior management team comprising about 4 really experienced individuals who I particularly rated. We also had within that senior management team a guy who never sold a house in our life. He looked after all the stuff behind the scenes. He was the money laundering reporting officer. He looked after the all the contracts with supply. Really, really good guy. And he'd often preface at a meeting, "Well, I've never been an estate agent, but..." And only towards the middle of December, he came up with an idea. I'm not going to share with you what it is, so I don't want Matt to pick up on it, okay?
Just whisper, Matt, cover your ears. No one else will hear.
Nobody else is leaving. He came up with an absolute cracking idea that I reckon that nobody else, with all our combined experience, there must have been 70, 80, 100 years of experience around the table. He came up with one idea that I reckon is going to generate 30 grand a year right on the bottom line, not just the top line of Thomas Morris.
Wow.
Because he wasn't stuck in the tram lines.
Well, we used to say years ago that when people describe themselves as an expert, X is a has-been, spurt is a drip under pressure.
Yeah.
And actually, it was that kind of get away from being an expert.
Yeah.
Come outside of your tram lines or your box and actually think outside rather than inside.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. And some of the best ideas come from fresh eyes.
Right.
They do.
Number 2.
Number 2 is that you can always get 3 drops out of an empty bottle. Now, I'd ask for a stage prop. By the way, crew, don't worry about this. We're not going to do anything awful. I know there's a rule that don't have any water on the stage, but I'm going to ask you. I don't know if this is going to work because this is not a bottle. This is a vessel.
Oh.
Okay, right. I'm going to ask you to start with. Take the top out of that vessel.
Right. As you do this, I'm going to commentate for people in their cars.
Okay. Oh,
yes.
yes.
So it's very important.
Yes.
So
okay.
right now,
and just empty that into there.
So Matthew is emptying a bottle of water into a empty jug.
Yeah.
Are you happy to call that a jug?
Fine. Yep. Okay. Right. That will do. Well done. Okay. Right. So put that.
And I'll seal that up so no one panics about
okay.
water.
Right. So
in the studio.
have done, just by way of background to this one, I have done a number of jobs over the years, part-time and full-time, and I have learned lessons from every single one that still apply to me today. So one of my first jobs was cleaning toilets. I learned 2 things from there. My next job was working behind a bar and serving on table. Really, really useful. My next job was, what was my next job? Oh yeah, knocking door to door and selling double glazing. Oh, learned a lot from that.
Gold.
Absolutely right. And then my next job was in politics. Now, I'll just go through the various lessons. The first one, before I get to the 3 drops from an empty bottle lesson. So my first job was cleaning toilets at a local golf club. And I learned 2 things. I'm going to share them both with you. One, I think you will be able to see how important it is. One of which I've never forgotten. I've never found a way that I can actually use it and place it. Okay, so lesson number one is that as a toilet cleaner, you have a superpower of invisibility. When you're cleaning toilets, everybody looks down on you. Well, they don't even look down on you. They don't even look at you to look down on you. They don't know you're there. And you can pick up a lot of information because they don't see you. So when I go to networking events, or sometimes where there's prospective sellers or buyers, sometimes, not very often, as I'm sure you'll probably guess, I just shut up and listen and observe. And I think to myself, I'm invisible. It's like when I used to clean the toilets, nobody saw me. And I make now a conscious effort whenever I go into a toilet and there's an attendant there, I like to have eye contact with that person because I want them to know that I respect what they're doing because I've done that job. So that's one lesson that I think is really important and can still be applied to a estate agency. The other lesson is, as I've said, I'm happy to share it with you, but I don't know how I'll be able to apply it. And that is, everybody's poo smells different. Now, that is what I learned, that I could identify who'd been in a particular cubicle by the aroma of their poo. And I could identify that. Now, it's a lesson I've learned, but it's not one that I've learned.
I've had to say, I understand needs. Obviously, the smell is another thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, speaking of needs, that is what I learned when I waited on table and worked behind the bar. That which I really, really, really enjoyed. Really, really enjoyed. And I learned that if I know my customer, I know what their needs are, as you said there, Matt. I know what their needs are. I can provide them with more stuff. You might crudely say, sell them more stuff. So if I had a man or woman who liked a particular type of whiskey, and then my manager at the bar would say, look, we've just got this new whiskey and it's musky or it's fruity or it's whatever it was, then I would challenge myself to see if I could, by understanding the needs of that particular customer, sell them that extra bit of that new brand of whiskey, or sell them a side that they perhaps not thought of. So again, that's a bit cliche, but genuinely that was the case. When I was selling double glazing, door to door. I mean, that is really, really, really good fun. Very challenging. And again, I learned two things. The first thing I learned, it was the first time I learned something that I've relearned since then, and that is salespeople, because that's what we are, and I'm proud to be a salesperson. Salespeople live in a climate of rejection. And all too often, I think, and I'm going to allude this with another thing I'll learn a little later on, people take failure too personally. I mean, they do need to in a sort of a way because it shows that you care. But really, you've got to understand you're living in a climate of rejection. I mean, I'm sure this has never happened to you, Matt, but it's happened to me, where I've gone out to a house, I've done a valuation. I think to myself, oh, this is great. This is coming home to Thomas Morris. I go back to the team and I say, absolutely brilliant, everybody. That one is definitely coming in the market with us. It's absolutely brilliant. I really bother with the vendor. I'll drive past the next day and there's a bloody gigs there. It hurts. It hurts because we live in a climate of rejection. Yeah, that was the first thing I learned, knocking on doors, trying to sell people appointments to have double glazing. The second thing I learned was, and it still amazes me, the people that don't know this, know your numbers. Know your numbers. I knew that about once every 30 times I knocked on the door, I'd be able to get an appointment for what we call a closer, who'd go in and sell them double glazing. Yeah, and I knew that therefore, in an average evening, I might get 3 appointments, and of those 3 appointments, get 1 sale for which I get a bit of commission. And I do think that not enough estate agents really, really know their numbers. I mean,
we've just done a training session on it this morning, Simon. I think one of the things in the last 3 or 4 years, is we've been so focused on team and values and all these wonderful things, we've almost forgotten that we're in a sales environment. Yeah. And actually what we've done is just run back through at the start of the year, the basic KPIs and then the action plans, the behaviours, the attitude to do it. And actually we haven't been doing that for 5, 6, 7 years. And actually it's one of those things where you go, I mentor people outside of the group on knowing their numbers because they're running a business.
Critical.
Yet we've got people in the sales team who are, you could say an estate agent in wherever they are, self-employed or employed, they are running their own business.
Yes, they are.
So if they don't know the numbers,
what's going to happen?
Absolutely.
So after I'd been knocking on doors, I then entered the world of politics. That is the general reaction, Matt, that most people give about politics, because everybody hates politicians. We all know, well, just like estate agents, they don't work very hard. They're not very nice people, and they're basically untrustworthy. That's a similarity in the mind of most people between ourselves and politicians. And I trained and became qualified as a Conservative Party agent. So I started my life in the Peckham by-election in the early 80s, where I was on the election team for John Redwood, who some of you may know, up against Harriet Harman. Harriet Harman won and went on to have a really good parliamentary career. I then went up to Manchester. Knocking on doors in the middle of Manchester is a really great training ground for a young Conservative. And the reason I ended up in Cambridgeshire is a constituency. After I'd passed my exams, a constituency became available. It was then known as South West Cambridgeshire constituency, to be the Conservative Party agent for an MP called Sir Anthony Grant. Well, he wasn't the MP at the time, but he became the MP. Really, really interesting. And genuinely, I do see a lot of similarities, uncomfortable as it might make people feel, between politics, being a Conservative Party agent, and a state agency. One of those things is that, again, I don't know about yourself, Matt, but I suspect you'll feel the same. It's good to get together with other estate agents from time to time. Yeah. Bloody hell, that wasn't very nice. This didn't work well, and let's have a laugh about that. And that's what we used to do as agents. So we used to meet on a Thursday or Friday afternoon. And in those days, it was very common to drink a lot at lunchtime. Yeah. I mean, it might be still very common for old boys like me nowadays, but everybody drank a lot at lunch. And we used to have some very boozy lunches, and we'd chat about this and we'd chat about that and the challenges that we had. We weren't able to raise enough money, or we'd had somebody come to the MP's surgery, it was a nutcase, all the stuff you would expect. And there was a lady who was the agent for a chap called Francis Pym. You guys are probably too young to even know her. Okay, he was a very prominent Conservative at the time. In fact, he became Foreign Secretary at the time of the Falklands War. That's how important he was. And Sheila was his agent. And so I used to look to Sheila to guide me and help me. And what do you say to people when you knock on a door and they say, no, I'm not voting for you, or whatever it was? And she gave me all this advice. And we'd get to the end of a bottle of wine, and she would say, there's always 3 drops in an empty bottle, Simon. When I'd say, can we order another bottle of wine? She'd say, there's always 3 drops in an empty bottle. Now what we're going to do, we're going to check Sheila's thesis. So take the cork out of that, which Matt is now doing, out of that vase, and get the empty, and just see how many. No, the other way around.
The other way around.
Oh, so the empty bottle. Sorry. Yeah, okay. And get 3 drops out of it.
Right, you got 1, 2.
There's loads.
There was more than 3 drops, wasn't there? Okay, right. Leave it there. Okay, right. Sorry, I apologise, Matt. I think I definitely overreacted there.
That's all right.
Now,
the lesson of pent-up aggression.
I was wondering where that was going. Go on. Okay. So we had 5 drops there.
Right. So what happens there? I mean, there's no story. It's just a good party trick. No, seriously, I always use this as a party trick. It's quite good fun. But what we would then do is have a chat, and then we'd say, well, should we get another bottle of wine now then? Shall we order another bottle of wine? No, she said, there's always 3 drops in an empty bottle. Matt, see if you can get 3 drops out of that empty bottle, in inverted commas.
God, the suspense is killing me.
1, 2, 3.
Great. Right.
This is going to make some terrible podcasting.
Yeah, that's right. But I think you'll agree we got at least 6 drops out of an empty bottle. Okay. Now, apart from being a really interesting thing, there is a lesson that Sheila taught us, and that was this. What would happen? I don't know if you know how political parties work, but when they go around canvassing, good afternoon, sir, can we rely on your vote? No. Okay. But the reason they're going around doing that is they're trying to find the yeses, because on election day, all that the parties are trying to do is to get their vote out. It's too late to change anybody's mind.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get, and they want to do it more effectively than their opposition.
Yeah.
That's why, I'm sure you know this, that's why when you go to vote, there are what are called tellers, and they'll say, excuse me, sir, can you tell me who you are? And then they know, and then after a period of time, when they think, flipping heck, Simon Bradbury, he's an idiot, he always votes for us. We need to go and, that's why they do it. Then we've got to try and get him out of bed or get him to come and vote. Yeah. Some people, though, were like, oh, I don't know. Or, no, I'm not going to vote for you. Sheila reckoned, we're not going to do it again, don't worry. But normally you can get 9 drops, because normally I do it again.
Yeah.
And Sheila used to do it again. And although it gets a bit nerve-wracking, because you think, no, honestly, you'll get another. And Sheila always said, I'll go back 8 times, that's 9 times in total, before I will give up on getting the vote. Now, some of my colleagues will know that I will often say to them, when they're trying to pull a deal together, and you can probably see where this one's going, when they're trying to pull a deal together, you can always get 3 drops out of an empty bottle. How many times, let's say we've got a house on the market at 400,000 and we've got an offer of 390, the vendor knows better, don't they? The vendor always knows better because they've got the biggest plot on the estate. All their friends tell them it's amazing. They've got extra plug points put in by the builder. It's definitely worth 395. And we're not accepting, in fact, we're giving it away at 395. And try as they might, the negotiator can't bridge that gap. And they leave it. They kiss goodbye to it. They kiss goodbye to X thousand pounds of commission for their business or for themselves because they don't go back. What I say is, now I'm not saying you'd be brave enough to go back another 8 times, but I'm saying you should be brave enough to go back 3 times.
Yeah,
try something different.
Yeah.
Perhaps it means that...
different conversation.
Different person, different conversation, remind the people what they're looking for, but there's always 3 drops.
I love it. We have this happen a lot, especially with the people that have felt they've done enough.
Yes.
Or they've believed the buyer.
Yes.
You know, the people that believe the buyer,
yeah.
They're at their limit. And you go, okay, so they're definitely at their limit. Yeah, they're definitely at their limit.
Yeah.
And you know, when you make that phone call, you create another reason why
yes, of course.
they can go up. And it's a really good lesson, the 3 drops, because I've never called it anything other than, it's that effort to go back and really understand needs.
Yes.
Have you asked about this? Have you asked about that? What else? Would they want to buy a second choice? Whatever. But it's that mentality of going back again. I
totally agree.
Estate agents are pretty crap at following up.
They are pretty crap at following up, I would concede. All too often, people just are prepared just to give up and say, and they'll often say, well, I couldn't do anything more. There's always something more you could have done. Always something more. I'm going to be really extreme now. But let's say you got the offer, the maximum they'd offer is 390. And honestly, Simon, they went offer £1 more. They wouldn't offer £1 more. They wouldn't offer £1 more. Yes, they probably would pay £1 more, wouldn't they? So you can always do that. And I do think sometimes, and I've experienced this myself embarrassingly, sometimes you can get a bit too confrontational with a vendor and they've said no and they mean no. And if you personally keep going back to them, it's almost a matter of principle that I've already said no to you, so I'm not... If you get somebody else to go back with, as you said, Matt, a different approach, a different reason, sometimes they can...
I'm going to take the bottle round, 2 bottles in fact, and I'm going to say, right, we're going to do something first. Forget about the offer.
Well, if you think
about the offer.
I haven't actually calculated this because I'm not that sad. But over the years, I probably have left on the table, I don't know, 12 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
With all those drops.
Yeah.
I reckon, I've got no evidence for this at all. I bet you most negotiators leave 10 grand a year
at least,
on the table that they could have got, which over 10 years is 100 grand.
Was that number 2?
Yes.
I thought you two would have killed each other by now, so I wasn't really time.
No, it's okay.
We need to rattle through the other 8. So
okay, right, let's go for it then. So my next one is life's a game. Okay. In actual fact, I don't embarrass you, David, but this bit of philosophy, I actually shared with your father, Malcolm, the guy who started the Guild and really moved Fine and Country forward. And I think we came upon this together. Life is a game. Now, obviously, going through life, things, as I'd alluded to earlier, things can feel a bit personal, they can hurt. But remember, life and business is but a game. I don't know about you, Matt, and I don't know about you, David, but I hate losing. I always want to win the game. So some people say, well, that's a bit trivial. It isn't a game, is it? It's how you make your living. Well, no, it is a game. And if you're going to win at a game, you need to know the rules. You need to know the rules, you need to know the laws, you need to know the strategies, you need to know the rules of the game that you're playing. And that will give you a lot of advantages. Was that short enough, David?
Yeah,
Loved it.
Brilliant.
Okay. You said that too enthusiastically. I thought you'd want me to... no, that's cool. Okay, right. My next one is fail a lot. Fail a lot. I think that is so important, to fail a lot. Obviously, we want to be successful. I'm not pretending anything otherwise. We definitely want to be successful, but often getting to that point requires a lot of failure.
Yeah.
And I've had quite a bit of failure in my personal life and in my business life, and I've always learned from it. I think they say that failure is not final, failure is not fatal, but having the courage to try again is what it's all about.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know what you guys think about that.
Completely agree. I'm almost repeating myself from the podcast we recorded earlier, but so I am repeating myself, but there was a quote from, I think it was Jeff Bezos, that said that Amazon is so successful because it's failed more than any other company.
Right. Yeah, I love it.
To get to the success.
I love it. And what I think happens is I think people accept that at an intellectual level, but emotionally...
There's a distance attached, isn't it?
Yeah.
And making it okay to fail. I mean, that's probably one of the challenges I think the corporate world of a estate agency has maybe not encouraged enough.
Yeah, okay.
And that's
I
from
agree
my
with
own
you.
background, because it was so much about the numbers being achieved that rather than, okay, you haven't actually hit that, let's break down why. And actually, let's have a look into it. So what have you learned from that? And it's actually using that experience. I think some of the best mentors I've had over the years have always made it okay to fail. They've always made me feel like you can take the lessons from those experiences.
Well, speaking of mentors, that's my next one, number 5. I would say get a mentor and be a mentor.
Yeah, good shout.
I mean, my philosophy is, this isn't my own original one, by the way, I've picked this from I can't remember who. Smart people learn from each other. Average people learn from experience, and stupid people already know the answer. I think that is absolutely right. Learning from each other is absolutely critical. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the organisation Agents Together.
Yeah.
They do mentoring. I mean, I'm a mentor for them, so we provide free mentoring for people that want to be mentored. And it sort of reminds me of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not that I've ever been to Alcoholics Anonymous, of course, but I understand that one of the guiding principles behind AA is that you have a sponsor and that you share with them the challenges that you're facing. And the idea is, as I understand it, and genuinely I've never been to an AA meeting, this is something I'm honest, stop winking at me, David. I've never been to an AA meeting, but I understand that the sponsors almost get as much out of it as the person that they are sponsoring. And being a mentor, and I would say, get yourself a mentor, be a mentor. I mean, a mentor, a coach, a trainer, pick the best ones that suit you. And there are many, many, many of them. Go on.
I think that locks in. There's a coaching methodology, to learn. It's actually, first of all, you've got to see one, then you need to do one, then you need to teach one.
Yeah.
So actually seeing it in action, seeing an appraisal or whatever, and then you go and do one, so you're being observed, and then you've got to go and teach somebody else to do it. That's when you lock it in. Yeah. And I think you're right, with that mentor.
Yes, I do think
that.
I think people in life in general, but definitely estate agents, need to be a bit more vulnerable.
Do you think
I'm going to correct myself. They need to be a lot more vulnerable. I'm fortunate enough to be coaching and mentoring a team at another estate agency out of the area that I live in at this moment in time. And that's the first thing I've said to them. I'm here for 2 days. Please pay your natural gain. Please pay your natural gain. Don't think, I've got him here, I'm going to have to try and be... Because I'm not going to be able to help you. Be vulnerable. And to their absolute credit, they have. Because it's difficult sometimes. I think particularly if you've been an estate agent for quite a long time and you think, well, I'm supposed to know this stuff, but actually I don't. But it's like a lot of things. You've got to acknowledge the problem to start with. Go on.
So the vulnerability, certainly in leadership, is one of the things is when people aren't necessarily happy in their role.
Yeah.
And so many people leave an organisation because they didn't feel they could be vulnerable with their leader.
Yeah.
And actually, more often than not, if there was some vulnerability early on and it was okay to have that conversation, there was always a solution for probably at least half the people.
I agree. I'd add something, Matt, to that if you don't mind. And I think that often, as a leader, if you can share with them,
your own stuff.
I got that wrong. I'm so sorry, everybody. And they, it's okay.
My problem with them is I tell them all the time all the mistakes I make, and I'm wondering if they think I get any right. That's the problem.
I know.
But I completely
very vulnerable of you to share
vulnerability is key, 100%.
Yeah. Here's my next one, number 6. It's never ever different where I am.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that is a controversial one.
Okay, well, I don't think it's controversial, but other people might do. Again, I'm fortunate enough to have been with a lot of other businesses apart from Thomas Morris and Fine & Country, and I've spoken to and networked with other estate agents all around the world, in America and in Australia and in South Africa and all over the UK. And when I'm talking to them and challenging them, not necessarily as a mentor, but just because I'm interested in that stuff, they'll say, oh, yes, it's different. I think you'll find it's different here. So, oh, is it really? Well, yeah, I had a classic one recently. Yeah, the people in this area, they really, really, really focus on cheap fees. They what? They really, really want cheap fees. Oh, and that will back me up here. Where we be operating, and certainly it's in Cambridgeshire, people love to pay high fees. The only negotiation that goes on is, we'll say it's 2%, they'll say, no, we're going to pay you 5%. No, it's always the same everywhere. Human being. Now, that isn't to say, of course, that you don't sell to people's needs. They have individual needs, individual approaches, and individual stuff. But it's never different where I am. I've heard that so many times. No, that won't work here. And we've always done it this way. Those approaches, I know where they come from in their brain.
Of course it is.
But it's absolutely ridiculous.
I was in Olney years ago when I was at Countrywide. It was given to me as an office, and there was two of my own branches. I had a Wilson Peacock and a Taylor's. And I always remember going to one of them who was doing worse than the other one.
Oh, yes.
And I'd say, well, I said, why do you think there's a big difference between your, really trying to understand, not antagonise them, because it could have come across that way. Well, they've got a much bigger window display than we have.
That's
right.
it.
In the same market square.
I must take note of that, Matt, because I must increase the size of our window display.
Yes, and then it was just brilliant because we changed the personnel in this one with the smallest window display, and they ended up being better than the other one.
Yeah,
but it's so in the mind.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I agree with you, and all I've really done is spoke to agents from all across the country, all around the world, and I would agree with you.
Yeah.
And it almost becomes ridiculous when it's sort of from one county to another.
Oh, yeah.
How different can it actually be?
Yeah.
I did, though, contrary to that, is I did have a conversation with someone who was, to cut a long story short, coming from somewhere very provincial, if that's the word, to bang smack in the centre of London. And I said the words which you will now hate me for.
Yeah.
Almost exactly what you're saying. I said, everyone says it's different where I am. I said, that is the only place I've seen where it is different.
Okay.
And to quantify that, I suppose, is that you get things that happen in central London that don't really happen elsewhere. So Lonres, the actual sharing of listings between agents there.
Yeah.
And then, we operated the estate agency in Mayfair for a long time.
Yes.
And that was unlike anything I'd ever really seen before. The fees were absolutely astronomical, but it was the biggest feast and famine cycle you'd ever seen.
Yeah.
In a territory where the overnight occupancy rate was about 30% or something.
Yes.
It's absolutely bizarre.
Yeah.
Depends what level you zoom out to.
It does.
Because fundamentally, like you say, it's not about people like paying high fees or low fees in certain areas.
Yes.
In certain ways that areas operate, I'd say that one will be slightly different. Just to disagree with you and give some spice to the podcast.
Okay, that's fine. You disagree and be wrong. That's wrong.
I knew that was coming.
Okay, number
I've
seven.
known you too long.
Number 7 is deliver bad news. That's deliver bad news, not be prepared to deliver bad news. Deliver bad news. Now, I've been racking my brains, and I'm embarrassed to say, I can't remember the name of the person who executed the story I'm going to share with you. But what it's to do with is this. I love going to the EA Masters events. I saw you at an EA Masters event, and I just think Peter Knight runs those things. They are absolutely fantastic. Whenever I go to any of those events, I'm like, let me out, I want to have a go. And at one of those events a few years ago, they had a guy who was billed as being something like the best negotiator in the world. That's not the best estate agent negotiator. That's the best negotiator.
Was it the hostage negotiator?
It was. The hostage negotiator. Don't finish my story, David.
All right.
Please.
I was trying to help you with
Matt might not have heard it.
No.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. So this guy, he negotiated with terrorists. He negotiated with the Taliban. He was the go-to person when someone was going to jump off a bridge to kill themselves. He got the record for, apparently.
Saves.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I didn't know there were league tables for these sort of things, but apparently there are. And this guy was top of the top of the top of the top. And what would frequently or occasionally happen is that some guy, and it normally is us stupid blokes that do this, I'm not saying us three would ever do this, but it's normally a bloke that does these sort of things. He'd have too much to drink, too many drugs. He'd lock himself into his house or apartment with his partner and a baby, and he'd say, like, I want £10,000 and a getaway car, or the chick and the baby gets it, type of thing. And they think, oh my God, we better call in the negotiator. What's his name? I don't know. Simon Bradbury, can't remember his name. I don't know.
Chris.
Was it? I can't remember.
Well, there's Chris Voss who did the Never Split the Difference. I think that's right.
Okay.
That's
well, thank
example,
you.
Yeah.
And apparently what would happen is that it set up communication to start with. And he said that the key currency that he works in is trust. Trust is king. Now, as practicing estate agents, we know that's a massive currency. And it's the one thing that the Property Academy do these. I don't know if you participate in the Home Moving Trends Survey. It's absolutely fascinating. Gives you a real insight into what buyers and sellers, landlords and tenants really think. And the key thing that people look for in an estate agent is trust.
Yeah.
I think low fees is something like 4th or 5th. So contrary to what everybody thinks, apart from the places where it's different where I am, fees don't really feature that much. It feels like they do, but they don't. Trust is the key thing. And what this guy needs to do very quickly is to establish trust between himself and the drugged alcoholic on the other side of the, who by now has started to come off the drugs and alcohol a little bit. It's a little bit compos mentis, and apparently, typically would say, look, Mr. Negotiator, whose name I can't remember, your objective is to get the baby, myself, and my wife out of this situation. I tell you what, I'll give up. I'll drop all my demands. We will all come out. I'll come out with my hands held high, and yeah, we'll all achieve our objective. And the negotiator dude says, no, that isn't going to happen. No. Where this is going is that once this is over, whichever way it ends, you're going to be arrested, you're going to be taken to court, and it's very likely you're going to be found guilty of something and probably end up in prison. That is what's going to happen. And apparently what happens there is that's what's happening psychologically, is that the dude on the other end of the door is thinking, effing hell, this guy's telling me the truth.
He's not sugarcoating anything, yeah.
And I can trust him. And from then onwards, he's able then to negotiate out of the situation. I mean, everybody says, well, why didn't you do that? Well, if he did do that with everybody, then everybody just get away easily. But the negotiator dude, again, I wish I could remember his name, but the negotiator dude says that you could only ever do that once, and then everybody else would know. So trust is key. And I think, therefore, hey, I'm not saying you go into somebody's house and say, by the way, your wife's ugly and your kids stink. You're not going to do that. Even if it's true, you're not going to do that, are you? Probably not a good move. But I do think delivering bad news to somebody, whether it's about the state of the property, the garden, the price that they're expecting, if it's done properly it's done professionally. Yeah, what do you think of that? I think that's really, really important to establish trust.
100%. 100%. It's actually, again, when we're negotiating offers, and if you go in trying too hard to get someone to tie something up, you lose trust. One of the things to say at the start is, don't want you to accept an offer that doesn't meet your needs. Now, you're putting the barriers down, rather than they think you're here to tie the offer up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you're so right. Trust is the currency.
Yeah,
always the currency.
Okay, and my next one is learn, practice, and execute at least 3 closes. Now, I still think, and I've alluded to this a little bit earlier on, I still think that estate agents don't really think of themselves as salespeople, because they think that's a little bit, But we are salespeople. Whether it's selling them a mortgage appointment, whether it's selling them a viewing, whether it's selling the concept to put in the house, we are salespeople. And I don't think enough people have that mentality. And the reason I don't think they recognise it as an art and a skill, the art and skill of salesmanship. And I think that they need to remind themselves using the 4 stages of learning a new task process. Are you guys familiar with that? So whenever you learn a new task, be it selling or driving a car, that's a good analogy, driving a car. The first stage is that you are unconsciously incompetent. Yeah. So stage 1, unconscious incompetence. I'm crap and I don't know why I'm crap. So I'm trying to drive this car, I'm trying to turn the engine on and it's stalling and I don't know why. Stage number 1, unconscious incompetence. Stage number 2, conscious incompetence. Oh, right, now I've got it. The engine is stalling because I'm not taking my foot off the clutch at the appropriate speed. Right, I've got that. I'm crap at it, but I now know why I'm crap at it. Next stage is conscious competence. Okay, I now know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through all the processes. And then the final stage, which is a great stage to get to, but kind of its dangers, is unconscious competence, where you get in the car and you drive from A to B and you can't remember how you got there.
Yeah.
And I think that not enough salespeople learn even what closes are, let alone 3 examples. And I think they ought to learn 3 basic closes. The alternate close. Would you like to look at this property on Thursday at 4:30 or Friday at 5:30? The trial close. Oh, I just salivate at a delicious scrummy wummy in my beautiful tummy. Trial close, they're beautiful. So they may have a problem. So could I take it that if that, so you use the words if or just suppose. Yeah. Matt knows all this stuff.
That's great. It's a good reminder for everyone.
But it's beautiful, isn't it? So a trial close is where you would use the words if or just suppose. Just suppose, well, I'm not going to use you. Why is that? It's because you've only got 1 branch. Okay. If that wasn't a problem, can I then, and then you might use my next close, which is an assumptive close, can I assume that you use our services? Yes, you can. So you've isolated the objection and then you'll overcome it. I love trial closes. And then the assumptive close, which a lot of people do completely unconsciously. Yeah, they do. They just say, so I assume you want to go ahead with us then. So, but too many people don't do that and don't use any closes. And I'm a massive believer in learning
this. It's a skill.
It is, man. It absolutely is a skill. And it's a much undervalued skill. And I know when I'm working in an office, my ex-colleagues at Thomas Morris would like roll their eyes when they can see me sitting next to them. I'm like debriefing them afterwards. Oh, that was a brilliant use of the alternative close there. What was it? Yeah, I saw what you did. And I was like, I don't think that we coach each other enough. We don't give each other enough feedback. When I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Meredith Belbin, Professor Belbin. It's a long story. Read about it. Meredith Belbin's team analysis. One of the key things of successful teams is feedback. In very, very simple terms, Professor Belbin did a teams analysis in the 1970s, and Liverpool Football Club were found to come on top. And one of the reasons that they came out on top was they were giving constant feedback to each other when they were passing the ball backward and forward.
But that makes so much sense of what you've said today as well about the vulnerability, the even accepting failure as well. I didn't do that as well as I should have done. I failed on that, and to learn why.
Yes.
And open up with your team.
Yeah. Okay. Number 9, understand your opposition. Understand your opposition. This goes a bit toward the life's and businesses but a game. I think all too often people are like, well, no, they're terrible. They always overvalue. They always charge cheap fees. They're always this, they're always that, they're always the other. Oh, come on. There's got to be some good things that they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any houses on the market whatsoever. So I think it's really important. Some people say, oh, no, I only focus on what I do. Yeah, well, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. You've got to focus on what you do. But again, to go back to the sporting football analogy, I mean, I know nothing about it. I know you're a footy fan, an ex-footy player, and you might even still be a footy player for all I know. I'm not. Even with a beautiful body like mine, I can't. Yeah, of course I should be. But I understand that the coaches at any level, let alone the highest level, they analyse their opposition before they play them on the Saturday or whenever it is afternoon. They know what their strengths are. They know what the weaknesses are. They brief their teams. So, I know that I'm not just saying this. When I was going out on evaluation, I knew I was up against Matt Giggs, and I knew I had to be on my top game because I know the things that he would say and do, and I know that he's very, very good. And I would have to be, but I want to share with you what they are. But I think I identified some little vulnerabilities, some little things.
Oh, now we're getting spicy.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but that's what you do, and I'm sure you do.
Opportunity and threats. I think it's that old SWOT analysis.
Of course it is, man. Of course it is.
But yeah, no, you bang on. And it gives you the confidence then.
Of course it does.
Which is key on the...
So just don't use the specifics of Matt, because it can get awkward. Yeah. But like, how would you go about exploiting a vulnerability like that in an agency? Okay,
well, you classically open up with the classic line, I never say anything about bad about my competition.
But...
yeah, you could do it that way. Okay. You could do it that way. But what you might do is that you might be implicit as opposed to explicit. So if you knew, for example, that you were, let's say you use somebody like Yomdell that did web chat, and the feature that you've been trying to sell to this particular vendor was that we can collect leads from potential buyers for your property 24/7, and I mean 24/7. If they go onto our website and they ask about property, there's a human being there that will look after them, which means to you, Mr. Vendor, that anybody at any time who's interested in your property is going to get a human being a response. Now, not all other agents do that. I know you're going to have Smith & Co out later. Perhaps just check with them if they do that, because it's really, really important, don't you think? That's the sort of thing you might do. But it's no use in doing that if you don't know. Also, again, going back to the vulnerability thing, you know, sometimes you can't compete about another agent, and you'll need to say, well, to be fair, that particular thing they do is really, really good. And I accept that, and we don't offer it. However,
do you know, it's a great point. Years ago, when I worked in Biggleswade for tailors,
right, who were the absolute, totally dominant.
We dominated there.
Yeah, you did.
And there was a period of about 4 or 5 weeks where I was losing quite a few to a particular agent.
Yeah.
I think it was Satchel's.
Yeah, sorry about that, Matt.
No, well. And do you know all it was? Is that I didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
And it was their website. They just built a new website. And they were showing the website, they were talking about the website and how it delivered the features and benefits to the client.
Oh, yeah.
When I said to a client who I'd lost an instruction to, I said, what was it that made you go to them? Because we got on really well, right? And yeah. Well, they had this website and they'd done this and it did that and they were telling me all about it. And I was thinking, right, now I know.
No, yeah.
And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So there we are, that's 9. Number 10, okay. Love, and I mean love, not like, love. I want you to love your suppliers, even Rightmove.
Yeah.
Love your suppliers, even Rightmove. I think all too often estate agents look to their suppliers as just a necessary evil in life. Oh, we've got to pay this for that. We've got to pay that for that. And when I go to exhibitions and conferences, people are like they're avoiding contact with any of the exhibitors, so they don't want to get involved with them. I think they are absolutely insane. Again, Peter Knight, I've used Peter Knight's name a lot because he is a bit of a hero of mine. He said that we need to think about them more as supporters, and I agree with him, that they are supporters. And just as you would expect, with a really, really good listing, where you get a really good rapport going, you're wanting to be, you're on the vendor's side, they're on your side. That's the sort of relationship you need to have with your supplier. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you guys are, again, Matt, I don't know if you use Spectre or not, or similar products.
We have done, yeah.
Yeah, Spectre, absolutely fantastic company. They deliver tailor-made letters to people at key points on their selling journey so that you can hopefully get the instructions. Absolutely brilliant company. I mean, fantastic team of people run by a lady called Heather Staff, I think. Now, I get on really, really well with that team. You need to have some good relationship. Now, as a result of our good relationship with Spectre, for example, we then found out that included within our payments to Spectre, they offered another product, which I wasn't even aware of, which now we do use. And that's why you need to have. I'll tell you a really good resource. And I think you're either planning or you have had a chap called Simon Whale.
So who? He's been on. He's been on.
Has he? Yeah, he's very quiet, unassuming.
I've never heard of him.
No.
I think we had him on. Yeah.
But he has a company himself, and I think David Mintz have a company called Kerfuffle. They've got the vibe correct. They understand that us estate agents need to build up relationships.
Yeah. With suppliers.
With suppliers. And the thing that really makes me laugh in this aspect of our discussion is the amount, and I'm going to use the word hate, because I do think most, I could be exaggerating, possibly I am, but I think most estate agents hate Rightmove. I see them all the time in the industry. Oh, I hate Rightmove. They're charging this. Well, don't use them then. You must see some value, unless you're some sort of business moron. You must see some value in using them, paying whatever you're paying them. Otherwise, well, you must be delusional. You must be completely mad. So with Rightmove, I think there are a lot of people say, oh, well, I tried to get in contact with my local rep and they never come. Oh, please. If you speak to Rightmove, other portals are available, of course. If you speak to Rightmove and you get one of their people to come over and chat with you, you'd be surprised what you can find out about their products. By the way, the on the market move's interesting, isn't it? Don't you think? Interesting.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think, well, I'll be honest with you, talking about learning from your mistakes, when I was a partnership and I had 6 partners, we used to run things very democratically, and on the market was getting started, and I think you and I had this discussion at the time, David, and I said no, but I lost the vote 4-3. So we actually joined the original on the market thing. We subsequently left, but we really were in favour of it. But I thought that will be dead in 3 years. Not only is it not dead, it's actually profitable. And now is it not only profitable, but I think, I mean, I don't know if I got these figures right, but they're talking about £48 million worth of spend in the year. That is going to be really, 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 really interesting, and a challenge to all the portals, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What fun.
It is fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think it means to agents, though? Do you think it's good news or bad news?
Oh, it can only be good news. It can only be good news, I think, for agents.
Why do you say that?
Are you thinking of costs all going up?
Well,
okay. The reason I think it can only be good news is it presents a challenge to Rightmove. It presents a challenge to them. That doesn't mean they will or will not be able to overcome that challenge. It's going to encourage innovation. I mean, they're going to come up with stuff, I'm sure, that Rightmove are contemplating. What I don't think is going to happen is that Rightmove are going to say, oh, okay, but bye then to 82% profitability. Bye. Yeah, can we help you on the market? No, that isn't going to happen. They're going to do something.
One of the strategies, you could be quite cynical about this, is they'd put their prices up again and again and again. I mean, they do anyway every year.
you might Rightmove, yeah.
But because if the cost is going to a point where they have to use Rightmove because they can't, they're squeezing their competition out. I'm not sure that's a bit of a cynical move. I'm not saying they would do.
No, but it's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, but it is going to be interesting. I think it does need.
Yeah. And that is going to be the one to watch this year.
Yeah. I feel so. Yeah. I feel so. And that's no disrespect to Zoopla, who also do an interesting and slightly different job. Yeah. But I do think that this is going to be the year, probably H2, probably in the second part of 2024, we'll start to see, I mean, I'm sure they've already planned and budgeted and ready to rock, but probably the second half of 2024, when we'll start to see, I mean, that Jason Tebbit is a very smart cookie, very smart cookie, and he's got a great team working for him as well.
It's really interesting.
Interesting stuff.
I enjoyed that as well. I think that was brilliant. Okay. I like the different
I think
variety.
It's a bit of an overstatement, but if you insist, David, we'll call it brilliant.
What does the future look like for you now then?
For me personally? Yeah. Oh my goodness me. What does the future look like for me? Do you know what? I genuinely don't know. Since I've left Thomas Morris, I feel like I've been on a holiday for a couple of weeks. So I am normally traditionally woken up quite early in the morning. And then
I know. I've walked over the bridge.
See,
you
see the light
early
on
doors,
and
I see the light there in the top window. And
the sad old man.
There he is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm lying in now in the mornings at 6:30.
I can't imagine you doing that.
And then I'm getting up. I don't have to get my suit on anymore. So I have been fortunate enough to have a few people have approached me to do some consulting for them. Nothing big and fancy. Just I'm focusing on how they can increase their listings at a particular branch in a particular market. And as I was alluding to earlier on, I'm finding genuinely I'm learning quite a lot. So I've got a few of those on board, and then I wanted to see what happens over the next. I'm not trying to avoid you. I genuinely do not know. So if anyone's interested in employing an old man, Matt.
Can you imagine? What a twist in the tail.
Do you know what? I'd never say ever, never say never for sure. And actually, I always look around for people that have got strengths in the areas that I haven't. And
you think I've got good looks, whereas you have?
Well, I do think that. That's 100%.
I think so.
I think But no, there's definitely some value in all of this.
Well, you two are getting on far too well, so let's cut that crap. We have a closing tradition on this podcast. Oh yeah. Where it is, so this is Property Porn Stars, and everyone has a porn star name, whether they know it or not.
Oh my God. I've heard about this stuff, but go on. What's my porn star name?
Not exactly a long time listener we've got here, Matt.
No, he's just giving the game away there.
So
Big
your porn star...
boy Bradbury, do you think?
Well, we'll find out. So your porn star name is comprised of your middle name and your first pet's name.
Okay, so my middle name is Luther.
Wow.
That's a good start.
That is a great start. That is a very strong start.
Okay, I've only ever had one pet, which I bought at a fair for my stepson, Kyle. And when I bought it, he said, because I always said we're never having any pets. And I said, well, we're going to have a pet now because we've just won this goldfish. He said, oh, can we take it home? I said, no. He said, oh, go on, Simon. I said, okay, one condition. He said, what's that? I said, that I can name it. And he said, all right then, as kids would do. And he said, what are you going to name it? And I said, I'm going to name it Kyle. And he said, well, it's my name. And I said, yeah. And then I knew what was going to happen the next morning. I chatted to my wife, darling, Kyle's got poo hanging out of his bottom. That's why I did it. So it's Kyle.
Luther
Kyle or Kyle Luther. Yeah. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Luther's good. I like the Luther bit.
Luther is a hell of a middle name. That is strong, isn't it?
Yeah.
Luther.
Big fan of that.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And you and I have worked together for a long, long time.
We have.
And as a supplier to your business at one point in time as well, then we were very close. We spoke all the time.
Yes.
And it's probably testament to that 110 of the laws that you shared there is that you would sort of get, dare I say it, like preferential treatment because you would be so close to those people. You were always front of mind. You were the first person that I would call if something came up. And then also the first person that I would call if I had a challenge or if I had a query or something. And that probably says a lot. And I was very grateful
or you
for
wanted
being
some porn advice.
Yes, exactly.
Of course.
The browsing history's never been the same
call
since.
Luther Kyle. Yeah.
And now you're on the Property-Pxrn podcast.
What a lovely turnaround, eh?
Simon, thank you so much for being here.
It was a
I'm really glad that
pleasure,
we were
great fun.
able to do this as well
Yeah, me
in
too.
circumstances. And we really, really enjoyed it. So there you are.
Great.
10 lessons from 4 decades.
Yeah, 4 decades.
4 decades.
In a state of
Hey.
Age of 31.
Simon,
Unbelievable.
thank you so much. We really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Good to see you.
And thank you so much for listening or listening to this episode of Property-Pxrn Stars. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, hit the download button if you've enjoyed what you've seen here today, and we will see you in the next episode.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.